afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Je suis très heureuse de vous accueillir à cette salle d'audience.
Very happy to welcome you to this committee room. We are televised for the first time, so we'll hope everything will work properly as planned. We are here for the 42nd meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and we are going to report on the Fall 2016 reports of the Auditor General of Canada. We have from the Office of Auditor General with us today Mr. Michael Ferguson, Auditor General of Canada, Mr. Martin Dompierre, Principal. From the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, we have Mr. Malcolm Brown, Deputy Minister, and Ms. Jill Werrett, Acting Assistant Deputy Minister, Portfolio Affairs and Communications Branch.
Agency, Mr. John Osofsky, President, and Mr. Martin Bolduc, Vice President, Programs Branch, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Mr. Gilles Michaud, Deputy Commissioner, Federal Policing. So I would just, since I've just taken a peek at all your opening statements, just to let you know that it's me here, not the chairman. So good afternoon, everyone. And Mr. Ferguson, the mic is yours. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity to present the results of our Fall 2016 report on the Beyond the Border Action Plan. Joining me at the table is Martin Dompierre, Principal responsible for the audit. In December 2011, Canada and the United States released the Perimeter Security and Economic Competitiveness Action Plan, better known as the Beyond the Border Action Plan. The action plan consisted of 34 initiatives aimed at establishing a long-term partnership between the two countries to enhance security and accelerate the legitimate flow of people, goods, and services across the border. We estimated that these initiatives had a total planned spending of over $1.1 billion, of which approximately $585 million had been spent as of March 2016. The audit examined the progress made by departments and agencies in meeting the commitments set out in the action plan and in achieving results toward the intended benefits. We also looked at how Public Safety Canada reported on progress, performance, and costs in their annual reports. The action plan had 19 initiatives that focused on enhancing security. Of the $700 million that departments and agencies had planned to spend on them, approximately $410 million was spent as of March 2016. However, departments and agencies faced challenges in completing a number of the initiatives, and they couldn't demonstrate that they had improved security at Canada's borders. For example, the Entry-Exit Initiative is intended to allow the Canada Border Service Agency to track who enters and leaves the country. This initiative, which has a budget of $121 million, was initially planned to be completed by June 2014. As of March 2016, $53 million had been spent, but the initiative couldn't be fully implemented without a change in legislation. Until such a change is made, the agency cannot achieve and demonstrate the initiative's security benefits. Nous avons examiné.
We looked at the 15 initiatives that focused on facilitating trade and the legitimate flow of travelers. We found that for trade, some initiatives had not moved forward significantly, were not working as intended, or had low adoption rates. The Single Window Initiative, which is led by the Canada Border Services Agency, provides an example. The initiative was intended to simplify border processes for regulated goods. As of March 2016, almost $80 million had been spent on Single Window, which had been in place for 1 year. However, we found that this initiative was being used to process less than 1% of shipments entering Canada. Another example is the CBSA's initiative to build a system to allow trusted traders to apply only once for both the Canadian and U.S. programs. Through this initiative, the agency aims to double the Canadian program membership. The system was launched in August 2015, but was soon taken offline because it was creating significant problems, including duplicate records. As of March 2016, $31 million had been spent on this initiative, which had a total budget of $50 million. We also found that departments and agencies were experiencing challenges for initiatives focused on travel. In many cases, there were either no performance indicators to measure the intended benefits or no results to report. For example, Transport Canada was able to implement its border wait time technology at only 1 out of 14 crossings identified in the action plan. Furthermore, even though the border wait time technology had been installed at 6 other crossings before the action plan was released, the Canada Border Services Agency had not assessed whether it had made a difference for travelers or had helped them better manage its operations.
We examined how progress on the action plan was reported and whether this reporting was complete and accurate. Overall, we found that in 2014-2015 report on the Beyond the Border Action Plan Horizontal Initiative, also known as the Horizontal Report, Public Safety Canada provided an incomplete and inaccurate picture of progress and costs. In addition, although the report provided information on annual achievements, it didn't convey a consolidated view of progress. As an example, for the initiative on deploying border wait time technology, the report stated that 7 crossings had been completed. The report didn't mention that 6 of these crossings had been completed years before the action plan was released. For the Shiprider initiative, the report didn't mention that the second main commitment to expand pilot projects on land hadn't been started or that there were no plans to pursue them. For the initiative on enhancing benefits to trusted trader programs, the report stated that there were 83 new members in the 2014-15 fiscal year, but it didn't mention that the long-term goal was to attract 1,700 new members. Pour finir,
Finally, the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat did not give departments and agencies specific guidance on costing and measuring program results, which led to different interpretations and inconsistent financial information. We concluded that although departments and agencies met many of their commitments under the action plan, they achieved limited results toward the intended benefits. Moreover, they had few performance indicators to use in assessing results. We are pleased to report that all entities have agreed with all of our recommendations and have committed to take corrective action. Madam Chair, this concludes my opening statement. We'll be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson.
Of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Deputy Minister Malcolm Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Bon après-midi. I think you've already introduced my colleagues, Jill Werrett, John Ozowski, Martin Bolduc, and Gilles Michaud. As members know, Public Safety Canada is one of many working to implement the Beyond the Border Action Plan. At the time of its launch, the action plan was a first of its kind horizontal undertaking involving many federal organizations collaborating with a number of American counterparts. Il est essentiel que le Canada et les États-Unis adoptent.
The Canada and the United States have to adopt a coordinated approach for all 4 sectors of the action plan.
Really facilitating trade and travel, coordinating cross-border law enforcement, and enhancing critical infrastructure and cybersecurity. We've seen work every year, and I know my CBSA colleagues will speak to the developments before and at the border, and the RCMP will speak to initiatives such as joint law enforcement. For the public safety portfolio, the action plan provided the opportunity to work together to enhance our ability to address threats early, for example, through information sharing in immigration and national security. Other examples of initiatives led by public safety would include improving the resilience of our cross-border critical infrastructure and more effectively communicating threats and incidents in the area of cybersecurity to our industries. Nous continuons de faire fond.
We continue to draw on the cooperation created within the framework of the action plan.
Of the pre-clearance agreement through the introduction of legislation last June and working with the U.S. on the implementation of new sites. Alors, avec ce contexte en tête, je parlerai brièvement.
So I would like to speak briefly about the roles and responsibilities before I directly answer the recommendations issued by the Auditor General.
Along with leading the development and implementation of several of the action plan's security and emergency preparedness initiatives, the department played a role in coordinating reporting to Canadians on the action plan on behalf of all departments. The Privy Council was responsible for managing the governance of and coordinating Government of Canada efforts on the action plan and working with the White House to publish an annual joint implementation report. Public Safety Canada took on the responsibility of reporting to Canadians through an annual horizontal report with guidance from Treasury Board Secretariat on horizontal reporting. Public Safety Canada and the CBSA and RCMP play an important role in responding to 6 of the 8 recommendations made by the Auditor General. Of those, 2 fall under the purview of Public Safety Canada. Je parlerai aujourd'hui de ces 2 recommandations en particulier.
Today I will speak in particular of these 2 recommendations.
To finding more effective ways to report outcomes to Canadians. Specifically, reviewing performance indicators will help us concretely measure the benefits of the action plan and better demonstrate results to Canadians. En ce qui me concerne, je parlerai d'abord de...
For myself, first I'll speak about the response to the ministry in terms of the recommendations presented in the report.
Doing all of public safety's initiatives to determine where changes to indicators are needed. An example of where we will be making changes to our indicators is for the Regional Resilience Assessment Program, which evaluates the resilience of Canada's critical infrastructure assets. Informed by the AG's recommendations, we've already put in place revised metrics to more clearly communicate benefits by measuring the changes undertaken based on our assessments. I'll note that out of the 12 initiatives we lead, over 2/3 have been completed. That's because many of these had a limited time frame with specific deliverables. For example, issuing a study of border fees or conducting joint threat assessments. A number of these initiatives focused on outputs in their contribution to border security objectives. The Auditor General's feedback will be considered as we move forward, carefully considered as we move forward with improving public safety's performance and reporting approach to meet Treasury Board's new policy on results and the government's results and delivery agenda. We'll also build on our lessons learned since the action plan's inception, understanding the importance of good indicators to demonstrate results to Canadians. All of this will help us demonstrate results to provide a complete picture of progress to Canadians on all our initiatives. With regard to horizontal reporting, with respect to the recommendations, as mentioned earlier, public safety was responsible for horizontal reporting on the progress of initiatives identified in the action plan. The department coordinates the reporting on spending and performance on behalf of and with input from all involved departments and agencies. This reporting covers activities through the end of the current fiscal year 2016-17 to align with the period covered by the action plan. At this point, the bulk of the 34 initiatives will have met their action plan commitments. The annual horizontal reports on the Beyond the Border Action Plan are published as a supplement to Public Safety Canada's departmental performance reports and are available online. À l'avenir, nous redoublerons d'efforts.
In the future, we will step up our efforts to make the presentation of the horizontal reports clearer for all those who participate in this process.
To ensure more complete reporting and provide greater clarity, beginning with the 2015-16 horizontal report, which we will publish in the coming months. For example, rather than simply providing a snapshot of the previous year's progress on each initiative, we are working towards providing a more detailed picture of how each initiative has developed from the start. This includes financial data such as cumulative spending to date with an annex containing a breakdown by initiative. We are also working collaboratively with federal departments and agencies to update the performance measurement framework and to ensure it reflects indicators currently in use. We will also ask Beyond the Border partners to review their indicators to assess whether each is still relevant or, if needed, to provide new indicators that might be a better fit, with a special focus on strengthening the indicators for intermediate or ultimate outcomes. We will be reinforcing a common costing framework in consultation with central agencies so that all departments and agencies report their accurate and complete financial information in a consistent manner. Furthermore, we look forward to providing updated instructions during the next horizontal reporting cycle to participating departments and agencies to strengthen their ability to consistently apply common costing. Grâce à ces changements, les Canadiens obtiendront une.
These changes will give Canadians a clearer image of each of these initiatives and of the action plan overall.
Better measurement of the Beyond the Border Action Plan's outcomes and clearer reporting will support transparency and help inform Canadians. We agree Canadians need to see clear results as we move forward in the context of the new results and delivery approach of this government. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We now go to the Canadian Border Services Agency. Mr. Osofsky, Chair, or President, rather. Yes, sorry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, as well as the Auditor General. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today. I'm joined by my colleague Martin Balduc, who I might turn for assistance in responding to some of your questions. Pour commencer, je dois dire que la SFC appuie les recommandations.
I will begin by saying that the CBSA agrees with the recommendations from the Auditor General. We take the report seriously, and we are determined to address the findings.
Mandate of our agency. We were created 13 years ago in the aftermath of 9/11. Protecting national security, therefore, was bred into our bones, and we undertake this responsibility with utmost seriousness. As the second largest law enforcement organization in Canada, we hold a dual mandate, preventing the entry of those travelers or goods posing a potential threat, while at the same time facilitating the flow of people and legitimate goods. Each day we process 250,000 travelers, 31,000 highway shipments, 12,000 air cargo shipments, and about 270,000 postal and courier items. Consequently, managing risk daily is fundamental to how we do our business. Our dual role of facilitation and enforcement requires this. Les agents en première ligne sont.
Our frontline officers are critical to delivering our mandate. Indeed, they are the first line of defense. Trained professionals, on duty 24 hours a day, every day.
Ever-changing environment where threats are as diffuse as they are diverse. It is within this complex environment that the significance and scope of the action plan can be appreciated. It set a bold and unprecedented course for a long-term partnership encompassing a range of areas such as information sharing and privacy, cross-border law enforcement, and expediting legitimate cargo and travel. Based on the premise that the threats could be detected early, hence the term Beyond the Border, the Action Plan's 34 initiatives aim to enhance our security by identifying high-risk people or goods early in the travel continuum. Why was this unprecedented? The action plan was multifaceted, complex, and represented a major shift from a reactive to a proactive approach to border management. Surtout, le plan d'action signifiait aussi.
Importantly, it also meant our border officers could be freed up to focus on travelers and activities of unknown or higher risk.
12 others. Je vais maintenant aborder les principales constatations de.
I will now address our responses to the report's key findings.
Indicators to show concrete results for initiatives as they relate to security, trade, and travel. We agree, and we are already taking action. Last June, we launched a review of key performance indicators supporting the 10 initiatives that we led. This includes examining their outcomes and impacts, as well as reviewing, revising, and developing indicators to more accurately measure the outcomes. Many of the new key performance indicators we identified were submitted to Public Safety Canada to be included in the 2015-16 annual horizontal report on the border, Beyond the Border initiatives. Parmi ceux-ci,
this includes indicators to measure the impact of Nexus program has on expediting travel for its members, which is, of course, one of the key objectives of the program.
expanded Nexus lanes, and enhanced the program's benefits, and membership has more than doubled up to in excess of 1.4 million people. This means that another 700,000 low-risk travelers are crossing the border faster, supporting economic growth, and allowing border officers to focus on higher risks. As we as well, we are developing indicators to better track the growing membership in our Trusted Trader programs, which make it faster and easier for low-risk, pre-approved businesses to make cross-border shipments. We will also enhance Trusted Trader benefits by installing additional free and secure trade, or fast lanes, which can be used by eligible Trusted Traders to clear their goods into Canada with greater speed and certainty. Fast lanes or booths are currently located at Windsor and Sarnia, Ontario, and we're on target to open lanes in Fort Erie, Ontario, and Pacific Highway, BC by this March, and eventually at Emerson, Manitoba. Cela nous permettra d'offrir les programmes.
This will allow us to offer fast at Canada's busiest commercial highway border crossings.
To the further collaboration with the United States as we harmonize some of our Trusted Trader programs. Harmonization of Canada's Partnership and Protection Program with the U.S.'s Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism program will eliminate the duplication of efforts in membership application and management, providing time and cost savings to eligible members. A second finding of the report that was that some action plan commercial initiatives were not meeting stakeholder needs as well as possible. Two were specifically identified. One was our Trusted Trader programs, which I just noted. The second was the Single Window Initiative, which aims to reduce the administrative burden on businesses by providing a single electronic window through which they can submit all information required by law and regulation on imports. In turn, we transfer the information to the appropriate department or agency, saving businesses the trouble of having to deal with multiple processes led by multiple actors administrating multiple regulations. In fact, this initiative eliminates nearly 200 different paper copies for various licenses, permits, and certificates that are required for the importation of regulated goods. L'initiative améliorera aussi l'efficacité.
It will also improve efficiency at the border, as release recommendations can now be made up to 90 days before goods arrive in Canada.
Agrees that we need to take better into account various stakeholder perspectives, and we ensure we are meeting their needs. In fact, last November, we met with the Border Commercial Consultative Committee regarding an adoption strategy and onboarding plan for the Single Window Initiative. In total, we now have applications for 29 trade chain partners to be certified in the initiative, and 5 of these trade chain partners are actively testing or going through the certification process. Au printemps, nous allons offrir des ateliers aux.
We will hold workshops with importers and brokers this spring. We will leverage trade association meetings and other direct-to-stakeholder channels to raise awareness. All told, we are confident this outreach will help increase adoption rates.
Line the bigger picture. Thanks to the action plan, collaboration between Canada and the United States has been systematic and cross-cutting at all levels. In short, the plan has helped to set the groundwork for the highest caliber of cooperative border management, supporting jobs and overall economic benefits, and a higher degree of administrative certainty on both sides of the border. Another example of this cooperation is the Binational Port Operations Committee that have been established at 20 land ports and 8 airports. Among other benefits, these committees formalize Canada-U.S. operational communication, including during critical incidents. A final example is our commitment to install radio frequency identification, or RFID technology, at 22 lanes in 11 ports of entry. As of last month, technology was installed in 8 lanes at 4 land ports, and the remaining RFID readers are scheduled to be installed throughout fiscal year 2017-2018. La capacité de lire une.
The ability to read an electronic chip embedded in certain travel documents before vehicles arrive at the booth improves security and streamlines traveler processing.
Dynamic and complex an undertaking the action plan has been. We rose to the challenge with focused cooperation across multiple departments and with the United States. In closing, let me reiterate that our agency is committed to delivering results to Canadians. To this end, we will remain focused on adopting solid indicators that demonstrate progress on border management for citizens and stakeholders and partners. Thank you, and I'll now be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osofsky. And now, pour terminer, Monsieur Gilles Michaud.
Now we're going to and with Gilles Michaud, who is Deputy Commissioner for Federal Police at the RCMP. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to attend today's meeting to discuss the Auditor General's findings and recommendations regarding the Beyond the Border Action Plan, specifically in relation to the Shipwriter program.
Its inception, more than a decade ago, and is the cornerstone for how the RCMP approaches integrated and binational operations with American law enforcement partners. Enhancements to the Shipwriter program was a Beyond the Border commitment. Through this program, the RCMP and select Canadian police services, along with the U.S. Coast Guard, have been working together to enforce the laws on both sides of the border in shared waterways. There are currently over 240 specially trained and cross-designated U.S. and Canadian law enforcement officers. There are now 5 Shipwriter teams located in British Columbia and in Ontario. Canadian police partners include the Ontario Provincial Police, Peel Regional Police, and Niagara Regional Police. Ces équipes se veulent des outils.
These teams are a critical tool in support of ongoing investigations with a binational marine nexus. Specific activities include carrying out on-water intelligence gathering or targeted response to known criminal activity.
Considerable efforts has also been placed on the RCMP's 2 other Beyond the Border commitments, enhancing binational domain awareness along the border and implementing an interoperable radio system for law enforcement personnel working in the border environment, specifically between ports of entry. Through the Domain Awareness Initiative, the RCMP and its American law enforcement partners have created a binational inventory of current technological capabilities along the border. We have also developed a binational common operating picture, which has improved response capability to the evolving methods and tactics employed by transnational crime groups. Recently, a joint methodology has been selected to be used to prioritize and to address identified known gaps and vulnerabilities. Ongoing binational cooperation on the Domain Awareness Initiative continues to contribute significantly to the security of our nations. Implementing a binational radio system for Canadian and U.S. law enforcement officers was critical to enable them to effectively communicate in real time across the border. The system provides a reliable, secure, and legal means to facilitate communication between Canadian and U.S. law enforcement. The RCMP has fully implemented the system. Now on the findings and recommendations. The 2016 fall reports of the Office of the Auditor General of Canada recommended that the RCMP focus on developing performance indicators that clearly measure the security benefits for our Beyond the Border initiatives, as well as measure and report accurate and reliable results against indicators to be able to assess the security benefits achieved. La GRC reconnaît pleinement le
The RCMP fully recognizes the need to be fully accountable, transparent, and demonstrate results. Steps have been taken to improve performance measurement, not only for our Beyond the Border commitments, but across RCMP's federal policing program.
is developing a comprehensive performance measurement framework that aims to guide, support, and increase performance measurement across all programs and activities. In addition to the creation of a Beyond the Border specific logic model and performance measurement framework, links have been made to the RCMP's performance measurement data for the new TBS Policy on Results Performance Information Profile. La GRC a également cerné des résultats atteints.
The RCMP has also identified outcomes to be achieved and corresponding indicators to measure and report the benefits for the Beyond the Border commitments the RCMP both leads and for those it contributes to.
We have developed outcomes and indicators that measure the long-term impact of the initiatives. For example, interdictions made as a result of technology, either sensor or camera, will now be tracked, as well as how the activities related to Shipwriter and radio interoperability have contributed to investigations, including seizures made. Additionally, indicators were developed related to the prevention of individuals from leveraging the Canada-U.S. border to commit transnational crime, including the number of individuals charged by RCMP border units, as represented by the number of occurrences and percentage of files cleared by the RCMP border units. In order to help ensure that the RCMP is able to report accurate and reliable results, baselines and targets have been identified. These will be used to gauge success over time. Where possible, data will be obtained through system-driven sources to ensure accurate and consistent reporting. I am pleased to report that the RCMP has met its commitment to develop a logic model and performance measurement framework for the RCMP Beyond the Border initiatives. Madam Chair and honorable members of the committee, I would like to thank you for inviting the RCMP here today, and I would be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Michaud. We now go to the rounds of questions. So, Monsieur Lefebvre, pour 7 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Mr. Lefebvre, you have 7 minutes. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. First, I would like to congratulate you for all of the integration work that you did, both on the Canadian side, but also with your American colleagues. We're really happy to see this, particularly given what's happened right now. We have to continue working in this direction. Nevertheless, there's something that's come up on several occasions that was in the Auditor General's report. Every group had an action plan, but no performance indicators or measurements were set up. So I'd like to start with the Auditor General, Mr. Ferguson.
To know if when you did your audit with your team, did the departments and agencies tell you why they did not have any performance indicators in place at the time?
I'll ask Mr. Dompierre to give perhaps more details on it, but fundamentally what we found was that a number of the organizations were measuring activities, right? So they had a number of things that they said they were going to do, and you can see a number of those in the report. You know, they were going to put in place new screening technology or those types of things. So they were measuring whether those activities were done without then indicating how those activities were having an impact on the outcomes related to security or related to speeding up travel and trade at the border.
Yeah.
So if I may add as well, there were logic models designed by each organization, so that not to say that nothing existed, but they were not monitored specifically. So as indicated, there was more output-driven indicators as opposed to be like intermediate or sort of long-term indicators in place. So that was what we saw. And in some cases, some of these indicators were not well designed in order to show the benefits achieved by these initiatives.
All right. And would you have any examples of performance indicators that these departments should develop to measure the security benefits of their initiatives?
Not really in terms of what we didn't sort of recommend any specific indicators to put in place, but for them to review existing indicators that they had or revisit some of them. In the report, we do mention that at the outset, there was, I believe, 126 indicators that were designed, and 70 of those, 57 of those were modified throughout the process. And if you look at the report in paragraph 93, I believe we indicate that 9 of these indicators were well designed in order for measuring the benefit. So we didn't make specifically recommendation about which type of indicators they should come about. We left it up to them to decide.
All right. With respect to a recommendation that Monsieur Michaud, vous avez mentionné au niveau de
Respect to what Mr. Michaud mentioned,
security benefits for the initiatives that they're responsible for. This was a recommendation by the Auditor General, and measure and report accurate and reliable results against baseline and targets, be able to assess the security benefits achieved. You mentioned that you guys were in the process, Monsieur Michaud, and I think in all departments, right? You got CBSA, RCMP, and Transport Canada, and Public Safety all responded with timelines that they would provide a response or come up with their plan. I see the RCMP said that they would complete no later than December 16th, 2016. Is that good? So that's all completed?
Yep.
Are we able to get a copy of that?
Yeah.
document?
I can share that with you. And I
Okay.
can say also is that being new in the chair that I am, as responsible for federal policing and being exposed to the performance measures and the metrics that have been developed, I don't think that we have it 100% right. It's a bit, I guess, difficult sometimes to be able to measure the impacts at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we are working in that direction, but I'll definitely can share with you our logic model and also the performance measurement framework
Thank you.
that we've developed.
And as well, wait,
Make sure that it's in both official languages, if you don't mind. In
Dans-
both
dans
official
les langues
languages,
officielles?
please.
Oui, certainement.
Thank you.
C'est
Merci.
que
Yes, of course. Since I'm new to my current role, I wasn't really aware of the performance indicators that were developed. I don't know them in depth. I'm not 100% sure that we've got them right. It's really hard to foresee the end of the impact, the final impact. So your document will be in both official languages. Same thing for Transport Canada. You said your action would be completed by 31 January 2017. Sorry, Transport Canada is not here. Sorry, CBSA. No, Transport Canada will be here Wednesday. Pardon me.
by December 2017, that's coming along?
Absolutely. No hesitation in committing to sharing the results with the committee.
And as well as CBSA is the same thing, right? June 2017.
That's correct.
Now, combien de temps qu'il me reste, madame? Madame la Présidente? Thank you. Je veux juste revenir à Monsieur Ferguson.
I'd like to go back to Mr. Ferguson. He mentioned public safety in the report of 2014-2015, the horizontal report. You gave an incomplete picture. Public Safety Canada gave an inaccurate picture of the progress made. Even if, while the report gave some progress made, it didn't really specify what progress was made exactly. For example, for the waiting time reduction initiative at the border, 7 positions were created, but it did not say that 6 of these 7 locations were created the year before the action plan was published. For the shipwriter initiative, it doesn't say what the overall commitment was, which was to extend the project pilot, and this had not yet started, and there was no plan to show how the program will be implemented. The Trusted Trader program said that there were 83 new members came on board during that year, but it did not specify that what the long-term objective was to attract 600 new members. So my question is, I think I'll ask it to Mr. Ferguson, is it inaccurate or incomplete? How can we be sure that it's inaccurate or incomplete? Are we misleading the Parliament here? Thank you, Madam Chair. It's simply what we noted during the audit. These weaknesses that were in the public reports. So it's really hard to say or to explain the reasons why the situation was like this. But we identified these weaknesses, and for us it was important to indicate these problems and point them out to the Parliament. It's important for the report to contain complete and precise information so that parliamentarians can understand the results of projects such as this one. Thank you very much.
This is for being here. Now, as I read the Auditor General's report and think of your positions as senior management of government, I come from business for many, many years, 25, 30 years. And if you read a report like this, pretty scathing in my opinion, in a lot of ways, what's your reaction? Because stereotypically, from where I come from, this is exactly what a lot of Canadians believe, is that there's inefficient use of our dollars, our tax dollars. As senior management people, what is your view? just go to the presenters. Mr. Ozowski first.
Sure, thank you for the question. I think, as the Auditor General noted, initially our focus was on getting this complex list of projects done. And so mea culpa on that. And certainly I can tell you, having just started a couple of months ago, that there is a renewed focus on bringing these performance indicators into play and put us into a better spot. But as the Auditor General said, performance indicators are sometimes hard. It's not always black and white. And what I was trying to allude to in my opening remarks is some of these are to our benefit in terms of helping us manage risk better, and some of them are clearly for the benefit of the traders or the travelers that we're working with on these programs. So we've certainly made it a commitment. We will have better indicators in place for June 2017, and I look forward to presenting that material to you.
Actually, can I just intervene? Before we move on, I want to ask you a specific question then relating to the first question, and that is, I want to drill down a bit on the single window initiative. Mm-hmm. And the report says, as of March 16, almost $80 million had been spent on single window, which has been in place for 1 year. However, we found that this initiative was being used by less than 1% of shipments entering Canada. Can you explain why spending $80 million on a program and showing that kind of results is acceptable?
So thank you for the question. I would just say, as I said in my opening remarks, that we've met with the Border Commercial Consultative Committee in terms of an adoption strategy. And just to maybe help the community understand, this initiative was at the request of industry. They wanted us to help simplify this process. This will replace 200 pieces of paper in terms of various documents that they could be submitting. And where we're at right now is still onboarding one more federal department and some programs. So we're sort of midstream, if you will, in the initiative, and I'm confident that with strategy that we've developed, that we'll be in good shape by the summer of or spring of 2018.
What was the $80 million spent on?
On the IT systems to link all of this together.
Okay. Maybe Mr. Brown, you would like to go next?
Sure. Happy to. I think it is worth underlining that and I'm not going to try and put words in the Auditor General's mouth, but a couple of things. One, we have work to do on performance indicators. The report also has indicated that the vast majority of the projects that are a part of, or the initiatives that are part of the Beyond the Border Action Plan are completed or near completion. There are some that have been delayed. So I think the question really was less about whether or not money's been wasted, but more in terms of showing what the impact, in terms of projects not being completed and that kind of thing. And I think that's where we have work to do. There are some, for an example, as recently as last little while, we are having a conversation about even examples that have been used in the report about shifting from projects completed and it was done as, as my colleague John has described at the request. Let's demonstrate how it's having an impact on the burden, the paper burden on shippers, the context of threat assessment. Let's demonstrate the impact that this project might have had on the effectiveness of targeting. I think we have to think very differently than we have as public servants in the past about demonstrating impact, particularly for initiatives that cut across departments. Those that are within a single department and more confined, I think it's less of a challenge, but I think you will see a significant effort over the next 12 months where departments will have done a better job with the advice of the work, building on the work of the Auditor General to fill that gap of explaining not just was a project done at the request of the government of the day. Yes, it was done, but what's its impact? And that's the challenge. We count inputs really well. We count outputs better. We don't count and describe outcomes very well. And an outcome that might be important to public servants might not be the same outcome that's important to parliamentarians. And so I think, frankly, there's going to be a bit of a dialogue. And so you'll see, and I'm sure, we have opened up a new front of dialogue, I think, with Public Accounts Committee with what you will see over the next 12 months, because I'm sure you will have feedback and say, no, we'd like you to improve in this area or another. So I think it's a work in progress, and I think the other point I would just underline again is that this was not about $80 million being wasted, for example. It's the projects were done as designed, and now it's about onboarding, and there may be gaps there to get the absolute top value for money, but that's where we need to do the work.
Okay, just one follow-up question then to you. The Auditor General pointed out a lack of coordination of costing information, projects not being costed properly, not being scrutinized. Is it your view that there was no waste of the $685 million, almost $700 million spent, or do you think that amount of money, which is fairly large in most people's books, was spent as effectively as it could be?
So I think again, I don't want to put words in. The Auditor General will correct me if I get this wrong. There was, in fact, costing on an initiative-by-initiative basis, project by project within each department. So I don't think there's a dispute about that. I think where there is the breakdown was in the way in which it was reported across the initiative, across the 17 or 18 departments. That's where we fell down. And we have work to do on that. I think a review of each of the initiatives would demonstrate that the projects have been delivered in an effective way. Will there be room for improvement? I'm absolutely certain. No human endeavor is ever so perfect as not to have scope for improvement. And so I think the challenge for us on the costing issue was, in fact, and this is part of the reality of the horizontal initiative. The guidelines are essentially provided by the Treasury Board Secretariat. We were working off that. The Treasury Board Secretariat and ourselves, and frankly the Privy Council Office, have work to do, or anyone who's in the position of public safety on another cross-cutting initiative like the Beyond the Border initiative, will have to be clearer about what their expectations are and how those are enforced, so that there is clout behind recognizing that that's not filling our information requirement as parliamentarians have identified, or as the Auditor General's identified. That's the kind of thing we need to do, in my view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Christopherson for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to our guests. Mr. Brown, your comments, just keep in the back of your mind, at the end of my remarks, I'm coming back to where you were.
Okay.
I want to do what may look like we're belaboring something, which is exactly what we are doing. The issue about data being provided, about it being properly analyzed. We had said some months ago at the urging or guidance of the Auditor General that this was going to be a priority for this committee, and that going forward we were going to spend a focused amount of time on this. It just happens the issue in front of us is just about all that. And I am going to make the case because we need to underscore, but I am going to preface by just saying that I am somewhat encouraged by what I'm hearing. But we'll come to that in a minute. The first remark in the Auditor General's report on page 5, 1.15 was, overall, we found the departments and agencies had not developed performance indicators to assess how initiatives have enhanced security and accelerated the legitimate flow of trade and travel. And then we go on, and the case gets made very strongly. Page 14, 1.55, we found that the agency had not developed performance indicators to measure how the single window initiative helps traders. Page 6, 1.24. However, we found that despite having completed most of the action plan commitments related to security, departments and agencies did not have reliable performance indicators in place to measure security benefits for 17 of the 19 initiatives. Page 8. However, 1.30. However, we found that while the department had developed performance indicators for information sharing, it had not reported results to show that information sharing had improved immigration and border decision making. I could go on and on. I'm not going to. I think the point is well made. But I do want to come back to the first quote I made, because the rest of it, again, you'll recall, it started with, we found that the agency, meaning the Canada Border Service Agency, had not developed performance indicators to measure how the single window initiative helps traders. Instead, it was measuring and reporting on project deliverables, such as the number of departmental programs that were using the single window and the number of forms that have been converted into electronic format. Because it was not measuring traders' use of the single window, the agency could not show that this initiative was achieving the expected outcomes. Now, to your comments today, representatives. CBA. Mr. Asowski. I liked what you said. You said, we agree and we are taking action. We hear that a lot. Last June, we launched a review of key performance indicators supporting 10 of the initiatives we led. This includes examining their outcomes and impacts, as well as reviewing developing indicator. What I really liked was when you said, this includes indicators to measure the impact our Nexus program has on expediting travel for its members, which is, of course, one of the key objectives of the program. Bang on. And this is a message. We had an in-camera session with the Auditor General going through another detailed report about some of our macro approaches. And again, one of the big issues was things are being measured in terms of counted, but is it making a difference at the end of the day? And so I was pleased with what you had to say. That's very good. Public safety, that would be Deputy Minister Brown. I was very encouraged by what you said, sir. I think you got it. I particularly liked that you said that you see going forward a further engagement with this committee. We do a lot of reports in your area of responsibility, and the fact that you understand that things are shifting a bit and we need to look at things, and this is going to be an improvement for all of us. I really like that, and I hope that, well, I know you meant it, and we'll get the opportunity to see that. And lastly, the RCMP, same thing. I enjoyed the report, but here's the thing. I'm going to ask each of you just to, and I'm probably used up most of my time talking. I do that. But I get another turn. You'll get another couple minutes to jump in and respond. But I want to hear from each of you just a little further on how much of a change you think this really is. And I liked what Mr. Brown had to say, so you can go last so they can't crib your notes. Because I think you got it in one. And I'm not convinced yet that everybody else that's come before us has, but drip, drip, drip. We do this often enough, hard enough, and serious enough, and there will be changes. So again, on that issue about the amount of shift you seeing in terms of doing different indicator reporting and performance analysis, all those kind of things. Tell me how you see a brave new world upon us, because we're all going to do things differently.
So I'll start. Thank you for the question. So as my colleague said, we find the AG's report helpful. The work on performance indicators is challenging, and I think the reality is that we'll probably end up having multiple indicators for any one particular program, because it's not just, for example, with Nexus, it's not about the precise time of how long you were processed at the primary inspection lane. It's how short the lane was. It's your satisfaction with the overall program in terms of how you apply, how you renew. So I think we have to look at it in a more organic way. And that will take some time, and I'm happy to report that we've actually set up a benefits realization unit to actually start to capture this and look at it in a more organic way. But not to forget, there's also benefits to us in terms of how we're managing risk. And that's an important part of the equation as well in terms of an outcome that represents value for money to Canadians.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Great. Let's move on to another one then. How about you, Deputy Commissioner?
Well, and I mentioned this in my opening remarks, is that this exercise for us has been very informative as to what Canadians expect of us on how we're accountable and transparent with what we do with the money that is invested in these specific projects. And this approach for us, when you ask, well, what type of shift will that provoke in us, is that I'm taking this and I'm applying this across all the federal policing programs. So it's not just limited to this, but learning from this experience and applying it across the board.
So. Very good. Thank you. How much have I got time left?
30 seconds.
You know what? I think Mr. Brown's going to go on longer than 30 seconds, so I'll give him a little time to marinate his thinking and come back to it on my next round. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Christopherson. Ms. Shanahan, for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, yes, to all the witnesses that are here with us today. I'll tell you that the thing that struck me when I was going through the material was that this was quite a daunting initiative. I'm wondering just in how many other areas of government that you would have such a wide sweep of an initiative where you're trying to change something fundamental across the horizontally across such a number of organizations. So I get it. It's not easy to do, and everyone in their silos, and then now you've got to come, horizontally. That costing has to be solved, and I don't know who can speak to me about that, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And I am also concerned about performance indicators, but perhaps I can do so by talking about a specific example, and that would be, I would be directing my question then to the Canada Border Services Agency with the single window initiative. My riding is Chateauguay-Lacolle. Lacolle is a pretty big border crossing, I'm just saying, and I deal with a lot of vegetable exporters, and if those trucks are sitting at the border, that lettuce is rotting, and that's not good for business. So I would like to hear more about your consultation process, because we did deal with some problems in the last year. We got some movement, but I think it will help with performance, with constructing performance indicators if that consultation process is improved. Donc, Monsieur Bolduc, oui.
Thank you for the question. In fact, yes, Lacolle is a fairly significant large border. Our strategy to onboard more traders. In fact, we meet our Border Consultative Committee twice a year, usually in the spring and the fall. And our last meeting, we engaged them in asking them, provide us with your best advice as how we can make this appealing. Because single window, we sort of approached it like the movie Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. Well, it doesn't work that way. We thought we had something very, very beneficial for traders. But again, if we're not able to present the incentive and what's the benefit for them, that led to us getting minimal membership. So. That discussion led to a lot of interest on the part of traders, and at the end of the day, what it will give the trading community the ability to do is to send us electronically all their documents and permit and certificate that they need, and have the CBSA the ability to connect with the departments that are responsible for those goods, and be able to confirm and facilitate and expedite the movement of those shipments at the border. You're right, perishable. If you have perishable goods, having them at the border for a few hours, well, it delays the time when they get to the main warehouse and where they're distributed in our grocery store. So we are mindful of the need to be and to change also the approach. Usually, government we thought we would be able to, or we had an habit of telling industry, this is what you need. Well, we're changing that, and in fact, leveraging industry and telling us what they need.
If I may, I think that's the key. I think there needs to be more of a consultation. So if you can build on that, maybe in the action plan going forward, I think that'll be very helpful to us. I did want to talk about ask you about the estimated total costs of the IT investments as well. That the traders have to make, that the companies themselves have to make. Have you costed that out?
It varies from companies to companies. It depends on the IT modification they need to make. I'd say most of the larger importers have a way to communicate with us. But when we last met with the membership, they told us that if accounting for the IT investment, at the end of the day, they would be able to make savings, but it'd be less human resources managing permits and certificate paper copies, and also expediting the movement of those shipments at the border.
So there is some kind of a cost-benefit analysis that's being done.
Well, when you're
there.
dealing with businesses, if they don't get a return on the investment, usually they won't go for it.
That's right. You won't get the uptake. And who can address the question of the costing, Mr. Brown?
So I can helpfully point you in the direction of the Treasury Board Secretariat, who I think is coming Tuesday.
Okay.
Wednesday, sorry.
Okay.
Kerplunk. But seriously, this is one of the challenges in terms of managing these kinds of approaches. You asked, are there any other examples? We can't actually think of one that's as big as this. This really was a first time trying to do something that costs so many departments. And to be frank, some of us were involved in it, and it took a lot of time just talking to people. A single window initiative, for example, is extraordinary in terms of all the different players. So the role of the Treasury Board Secretariat in terms of establishing these kinds of standards or guidelines for us is essential, and they are involved in our deliberations about thinking through how we would frankly report both horizontally and vertically. It's not straightforward, so it's going to be a challenge, and I don't think we will get it right. It will be better, but I'm not sure it's going to be perfect the first time we take a stab at it.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you very much. Allow me just to spend 2 minutes for just some technical issues. We'll be right back, okay? Toutes mes excuses. Alors,
Please accept my apologies. We're going to resume with 5 minutes of questions from Mr. Zerou.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, all of you, for being here today. So we know that we've been able to place our CMP officers on Coast Guard vessels. We have new screening devices at airports, and we have extensive information sharing programs. But based on what the Auditor General has said, we have zero idea on if any of this is working. So I want to take the approach from our relationship with our ever-changing relationship with our U.S. counterparts. Do we have any knowledge, and open this up to everybody, if anybody does have any knowledge, if they've set performance indicators and if they are meeting their performance indicators, if there's any benefit that we have the opportunity to they've done the work where we can benefit from it. I'll draw your attention just before I open it up. There was, back when this was initially started in 2011, there was a article in the National Post that indicated from the reference is one senior official. Canadian officials said they were reassured that implementation of the action plan will be run from the White House. Is that an indication that we kind of have the expectation that they would set the bar for a lot of these, and we would then react to it, or is there? Do you guys have any more insight possibly on why that was said?
I'll start on the general response. I believe, and I've just confirmed this with Jill, that the U.S. doesn't have a similar horizontal reporting tool or device, so it would have you'd have to evaluate it silo by silo, and I don't think anyone has, at least that I'm aware of, but I'll let my colleagues drill down.
Unfortunately, I'm not aware of anything on the Customs and Border Protection side that's equivalent to this.
Okay, so I guess drilling down a bit more, if we go and we set these performance indicators as the Auditor General has suggested, is there any impact then on our U.S. counterparts that we should be aware of? Again, open it up to everybody. Has this occurred to anybody, I guess?
Well, I think, if I may, just as I said earlier, I think our initial focus along with our partners in the United States has been just to get the projects going and get them lined up. Obviously, there's big differences in terms of our legislative procedures, our whole legislative frameworks, and sort of getting that lined up is quite different. A good case in point, for example, is pre-clearance. They just before Christmas unanimously passed their pre-clearance legislation. Ours is before the House, so it's a little bit of a stepwise kind of approach as we move forward on these larger sort of framework issues, but not necessarily at the very detailed performance indicator level.
Do we have any, has there been any update on, I believe the Auditor General made reference to a memorandum of understanding between us and the U.S., also one with the European Union. Do we have any recent update on where we're at with that? Because I understand that financially it doesn't appear to be a holdup. There appears to be a significant amount of money put towards this program that still hasn't been used. However, it appears that the memorandum of understanding, which is a holdup with the U.S. To continue to implement the program. Is that any progress on that?
Are you referring to pre-clearance or
yes.
entry-exit?
Yeah.
So pre-clearance, we started with some pilots that we did just to sort of test some assumptions in terms of how operationally this would work out at a more detailed level. And now we're waiting for the broader legislative framework to establish because, as you're aware, it's a reciprocal agreement in terms of officer powers, and that has to be constitutionally correct in both countries. So that's why we need the legislative frame in terms of full implementation. I'm not sure if you'd like to add to that, Martin, or no?
I think your point about agreements with the EU is on interactive passenger PNR, which is a different initiative, which our colleagues can lay out for you about where the status of those negotiations are.
So we have negotiated the new PNR agreement with the European Union. This has been brought before the courts by some of the members, and we're still awaiting the decision of the courts as to does it meet the privacy legislation in the EU. So it's a wait and see.
Okay. I believe I have 10 seconds, sure.
Yes, thank you so much. We have now Mr. Shen for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the departments and agencies as well as the Auditor General for being here today at our committee, and in particular for the work that you do on behalf of Canadians to serve Canadians and to ensure that our country's borders are well protected. The big win that I see coming out of the Beyond the Borders initiative is what I heard underscored by one of the speakers today, is that we are really working towards building and strengthening that cooperation between Canada and the U.S. And it's so incredibly important for us to continue to strengthen that cooperation, to build on the work that our two countries do, and to ensure that open communication is always there, that we are breaking down the walls through dialogue and through working together for our shared interest, be it mutual security or the economic benefit of working closely together. I know in the Auditor General's report we've talked about a number of areas that need improvement, and I just, in light of what we've talked about today, I want to really underscore how I read the comments that were made by the Auditor General today. He said very clearly that we could not show how security improved. And that is not to say that security has not improved. The Auditor General said that there are no reliable performance indicators. That is not to say that there aren't some that are working and indicating performance. I want to continue on what my colleague Ms. Shanahan referred to in terms of the cross-cooperation between the departments and agencies, because I feel that there are consultative processes that are occurring. There are performance indicators that are being developed, and my big worry is that what is missing is a big picture overall strategy, because to me those performance indicators are built upon strategic goals, and strategic goals of improving the way our businesses are able to work across borders, improving the flow of travelers across the 49th parallel. And so my question really is out to the departments and agencies. Do you feel that you are left working in silos? Do you feel that there is a better way? And I know that we are meeting with Treasury Board Secretariat folks in the coming weeks, but can you comment on the challenges you face with respect to that connectedness that needs to happen in order for all of us to ensure that those goals are met? And I leave it open to anyone.
I'll take a stab at I think you're asking a pretty fundamental question. We work in a Westminster model where ministers are accountable to the House for the appropriately, and accounting officers to parliamentarians to for the operation of their individual departments. Cutting across that is our horizontal initiatives and how you pull those two together. So I think it is a very complicated question. I do think, if you were to ask any of the people at this table, that we are all getting better at working horizontally. There's almost now no issue that at least doesn't have some degree of, you're bumping up against somebody, and the days of ignoring them are over. You've got to actually find a way to work collaboratively together. I do think, for the purposes of things like the work of the Auditor General and informing Canadians about these things, these are big challenges, and the audit, this report demonstrates where some of those gaps are. So I don't think it's a lack of will. It's frankly developing the muscles and the tools to be able to do it effectively, and you're seeing the sausage being made, if I can put it that way, which isn't always pretty.
10 seconds left.
I will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hoback, it's 5
thank you.
minutes to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chen, I think you're correctly pointed. If you don't have the indicators there, you can't say whether it was effective or not. You really just don't know. You don't have the answers. And that leads to my first question. And what were you using for decision-making indicators in that scenario? If you didn't have the appropriate models in place, well, then how did you know that, okay, this management decision should be undertaken or not? What would you utilize?
Well, I will take a stab at that. If you're really asking why were these initiatives selected, it's a product of a negotiation between Canada and the United States at the time, led by the highest levels of both government. And frankly, listening to stakeholders, there was a lot of consultation done at the time in terms of hearing from stakeholders, the private sector, in terms of these are the kinds of things we'd be interested in seeing.
These stakeholders are happy with what they're seeing so far because they're involved in the process then of implementing.
Well, I think a good example is what John's given you is a single window. Good idea and concept, something that they were looking for. The implementation of it has been done. The take-up hasn't. Well, why? Well, I think our friends at CBSA have described. I think in other instances, the system's working, and the challenge is demonstrating how it's working more effectively. Okay. Certainly in the interactions I think we've had with most stakeholders, they're generally pleased that the Beyond the Border Action Plan was agreed to and has been and is being implemented.
So it's fair to say then, that the stakeholders are appreciating the general direction you're going. Now, the Auditor General is signaling some value issues here for sure. And, I look at it and one of my concerns right away off the bat is I see an estimate of $1.1 billion to be spent and then only $585 million being spent. So is that because there's more time to implement the program, or is that because you really didn't have an idea of how much you're going to require and you just didn't know, where to pull that number from in the air to put into place? Or?
Generally, it was the time to implementation, not because it was these are well costed, gone through the process of Treasury Board, et cetera. You can ask
but it is the
about
first time that
items.
you've broken down the silo, so I can understand if there'd be discrepancy. I wouldn't expect it to be bang on for the dollar, but
well, it's pretty close. But it's the delay in the implementation of things that are outside the scope of a particular department or even the initiative across the board because of questions like my colleague was talking about pre-clearance, and there's been a delay there in part because of the complicated issues around allowing officers to work in both countries, for example, and the requirement for legislation.
So the legislation so that it holds you back, and then once that's in place, then you can move forward.
Exactly.
Is it fair to say that the U.S. outcomes on this project are equal to the Canadian outcomes and what we want to see at the end of the day?
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess on their behalf.
When you start looking at these models now, and you're putting these models in place to look at the effectiveness of the programs you're now offering, are we doing this in such a way that you can make those management decisions, or are we doing it in such a way that it just allows the Auditor General to feel comfortable with what you're doing? Can it be the same, or are they different?
Well, I'll speak for myself. We make management decisions all the time, and any additional information that you can bring to the conversation that gives you a better informed decision, you're making a better
But if you're
management
spending
decision.
a pile of money to create a model that's only satisfying one group and you don't necessarily use that data for anything else, is that cost effectiveness?
Well, it depends, I suppose, on how big the project is. And that's a very good question in terms of, and we were debating it just this morning, actually, about, what's the cutoff point between, dozens, my words, nobody else's, dozens of individual indicators that take time and money to develop versus one or two that could cut across. But the problem is then causality, because all of these were supposed to support security. Well, how do you measure security?
Yeah.
Well, so we got to drill down a couple of layers, and I think that's part of we will see the product of our work collectively and all the other departments and over the course of the year, and you'll have an opportunity to tell us how far short of the mark we've fallen. And I suspect the Auditor General will do the same.
Yeah, see, that's what, Mr. Chrysostom and I were just had a sidebar conversation on Nexus cards. When there's a big lineup, I love my Nexus card, but I can't quantify that to you. I can't tell that to you. Yet, if there's a small lineup, you wouldn't necessarily see the benefit. I look at that as same as border crossings. When you have a huge lineup and you got a Nexus card and you get to go along the side and pass 3 hours worth of wait, okay, I can see the benefit, but how do I quantify that? How do I put that into a number that extracts value? How do I make it to you guys saying that by having that extra hour and a half to travel or not waiting at the border, it saved me $100,000? Or again, I can't do that, and there's no way to find that out. So I can definitely see your issues there and how to put that model in place. Communications or technologies, you're 6 years into it. How do you know that the technology you've got now is still current and still the best of the best? That it's already starting to be 6 years old. Lots of changes. How do you keep that up to date, and how do you keep improving that? Just curious on that.
Well, I think that certainly there's individual technologies that have been in place for some time and they're reliable, and that's why we use them. And there's other ones that are sort of more recent. Some of the biometric stuff on the Nexus card, for example, is more recent. But again, trying to have consistent approach with that, and again, harmonizing with the United States, so we're both using the same technology, so it's very clear and consistent. I have had no indication that there's any issue with the technology. Obviously, there will be refreshes as they go through. There's always a life cycle to these things, and we account for that in the plan. So, but I've heard no concerns about anything sort of not being up to snuff.
I've been cut off, so I guess.
Mr. Area for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair. Mr. Brown, while answering a question, you mentioned question is not money is wasted. In this committee, we have seen Shared Services Canada. I'm sure we are going to see the Phoenix system, quite a big projects, and we'll see how much money is wasted there. You also mentioned that the delay in spending, some of the factors that has affected are outside the scope. However, on the entry-exit initiative, which was scheduled to be completed by June 2014, it has not been done. You have spent $53 million there, and the Auditor General says that it could not be implemented without a change in legislation. So that is certainly not outside the scope. It's somewhere with the government or with the department. What is the status on that?
Well, I'll answer very briefly and then let my colleagues who are responsible for the initiative. But the legislation's been introduced. There have been elements of it that have been implemented. It has not been completed, but there have been elements that have been implemented. And I think there's lots of work that's been done and can be demonstrated.
Yes, I could just add that it has been going for a while with respect to foreign nationals and permanent residents. The next stage in terms of having all travelers be part of the system is something where we had to wait because we needed the enabling legislation, and there was also a change in government in there as well. So it's taken some time.
When do you expect it to be completed?
Well, we need the legislation passed now, so we're kind of in this pause right now, waiting for the final bill to be approved by the government, and then
to parliamentarians.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the same Border Service Agency's Trusted Traveler Initiative, Auditor General says that it was launched in August 2015, but was soon taken offline because it was creating significant problems. And you had spent $31 million on this initiative out of $50 million.
Yes.
What is the current status on that?
We're currently waiting for the United States Customs and Border Protection Agency to do a systems upgrade, and that will allow for the harmonization of the system.
So till they do that, the investments we have made is not yielding us any results?
That's correct.
Okay. And once again, on the Nexus, the recent changes in the U.S. administration and their executive orders, has it affected the program in any way?
Well, as you've seen in the reporting on that, there have been some issues, but this is a very dynamic environment right now with respect to that small subset that were identified in the executive order. And I guess we'll just watch the different court cases unfold and see where it ends up. But from our perspective, it's status quo on the Canadian side.
And yours and RCMP's, many of the initiative requires close cooperation working with your counterparts in the U.S.
Yes.
Have you noticed any change during the last couple of months?
I can speak to that one. Yeah. No, we work daily with our colleagues at USCBP, and we haven't seen any changes. They're still engaged, and we have a common goal of protecting the border. So.
The same at our end. No changes at all.
Do you expect any changes? Are you making any contingency plans?
No, for us it's business as usual. Yeah.
That's good. And
you still have a minute.
Yeah. No, overall, Mr. Brown, Auditor General said that departments and agencies face challenges in completing a number of initiatives, and they could not demonstrate that they had improved security at Canada's borders. So, when do you think all these initiatives will completely get implemented? Then you can say to us that, look, we have achieved what we aimed?
Since some of those decisions are certainly outside of my remit, and some of them are legislative, I'm not going to presume when Parliament's going to deal with the entry-exit legislation and the pre-clearance legislation, for example. The objective as public servants is to have the initiative completed by 2016, 2017. That's when the initiative is supposed to come to an end. But and in terms of demonstrating to Canadians more effectively impact and results, I hope we have progress to show you when we present our revised performance framework.
No, you mentioned about the Parliament and the legislation twice, but only piece I see that affects only 70 million of the $1.1 billion. So is there anything else that is getting affected due to the legislation not getting passed?
Negotiations, I guess, with the EU. There may be others. I don't have a comprehensive list.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Christopherson, your turn again.
Great. Thank you, Chair. To pick up where I was, I will come back to Mr. Brown. Just a quick comment. I know that there's Treasury Board folks here today. They know that Thursday is not going to be Wednesday is not going to be a good day for them. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because simple answers are not going to suffice. We're going to want some pretty exhaustive responses to these issues, because a lot of it goes right back to them. The other thing I wanted to say was, I really like what we're hearing, and to give Mr. Brown a chance to close off from my questioning, because I really liked what he said about the engagement and the ongoing aspect of it. But just in the issue of one and done is something we've dealt with many times here, this idea that as long as people can get through the public hearing, they're safe. They're one and done. They don't have to ever worry about it again. We've got measures in place to make sure that that's not quite so easy to do anymore, and they're beginning to understand that. But one of the things we should state is the possibility that if everybody suddenly has gotten religion on this and is coming in saying all the right things, then it behooves us to then ask the Auditor General to go back in or put in our own requirements for responses to see how they're doing, to make sure that it's not just words, and then separate out those who have not yet drank the Kool-Aid that we want them to drink, and those that have, who are only saying they did and are not actually making changes. This is serious stuff. This committee's not going anywhere until the next election, and so we're going to be continuing to pursue this issue of data, of making sure it's collected, that it's properly collected, that it's up to date, and that it's analyzed in a way that actually improves things. We're going to be like a dog with a bone on this going forward. So having said that, Mr. Brown, I give you the opportunity to close off my remarks.
Well, it's quite a tall order, sir. Briefly, the proof will be in the pudding. Number two, I think the point of a dialogue is that I don't think, and while I think the Auditor General would be pleased if we got it completely right the first time, I don't think he expects us to. I think we all expect the OAG to pay us a visit in the years ahead on this. I don't think anyone's under any illusions. And at least three of us, I think, I won't speak for the other departments that aren't here, but three of us are in the cycle of appointment that we are fully aware that we can expect to be back here talking about these kinds of things, because he's newer than I am. I've only been in the job for 8 or 9 months, and you've only been in the job 2 or 3, right? So I think we expect, fully understand that we will be back here talking about these things. I also think that we fully expect that you will find shortcomings. I have been thinking about outcome measurement for a long time. This is very tough stuff, and part of it is getting started and trying it and improving as you go along. And I think this was a effort. The horizontal report was unusual. There were challenges. The AG's identified them, and we have lots to work with to improve it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maloney, you have 5 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brown, to pick up on your point, talking about cycle of appointment, I've only been involved with this committee for about slightly over an hour. So I say that because I'm new to this issue, but I'm intrigued by some of the things I've heard today. So forgive me if some of my questions are too basic. But I want to ask some questions about the Trusted Trader program. I'm familiar with the Nexus program, but the Trusted Trader program, I'd like to know specifically how it works. Is it done by businesses or by industry, for starters? So if I'm a trucking company in Mississauga and I'm shipping freight across the border on a regular basis, one day I may be shipping widgets, the next day I may be shipping something completely different. So is the criteria for approval and membership in the program determined on my credibility, or is there some measure with respect to the product I may be carrying from time to time?
If I may, thank you for the question. It's ensuring security of all the train chain partners. So it's the importer, it's the trucking company, it's the driver in the cab. So once we have vetted all of those, then you get access to the expedited lane. So when we make reference to fast driver, it's the equivalent, if you want, of our Nexus program. So the person has been vetted by us, and so that's the whole chain, if you want.
Okay, so it's gauged by the cargo as well as the
importer,
organization.
The importer.
Okay.
Not necessarily the cargo.
Okay, but does the carrier also have to be part of the program,
Yes.
as well as who
Yes.
is responsible for the cargo?
Exactly.
Okay, so do you need then corresponding approval on the U.S. side? Because a lot of these trucking companies, to use that example again, they're picking up loads and they're taking them to the States, and to make it more profitable, they'll try to pick up a load on the other side to bring it back. Mm-hmm. So I assume there's a similar process on the American side?
Exactly.
Okay, so they'd have to know that before they, on both ends, before they...
Maybe to use an example, a truck carrying auto parts at the Windsor border can cross, the same part can cross the border 7 times, so in between the two countries.
All right, and then in terms of the evaluation criteria, it's low risk. What's the definition of low risk?
Low risk is good character, no previous border-related offense, no derogatory. Merci. Il y a des mots en anglais qui sont plus durs à dire que d'autres.
Some words in English that are harder to say, to come up with. So there's no information on the individuals that is criminal, and approval to be provided.
So would drivers for individual companies, for example, have to be pre-approved in addition to the company itself? Okay. Now what sort of capacities I see in the briefing note or the introduction remarks? There's a number of lanes going to be opened up. Is this? I assume that the corresponding lanes on the U.S. side in Fort Erie, for example, are ready to go at the same time?
I wouldn't have the numbers on the lanes on the U.S. side. It's something that I could provide the committee if needed.
Okay. So is there a scenario in which an entry lane from Canada to the U.S. would be available but not coming back through the same border?
Again, I would have to confirm. If I use the example of Nexus lane, usually they're available on both sides. Thus the benefit of being a Nexus member.
Okay. And I don't think I have much time left. The approval process have you had feedback from the people who are part of it already to see how effective it is from their perspective?
No, I not specifically for the FAST program. We hear a lot of good, positive feedback on the Nexus program. Again, the application is...
Including for me, just for the record.
Okay. It's a joint program. CBSA does its own assessment. USCBP does a separate assessment. And if the two organizations give a green light, then you are deemed trusted and you get your membership into the program. FAST works similarly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McCollum?
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Back to the example of the single window. And you've stated, and it's stated in actually the report that that you've accepted the recommendation of the Auditor General and that be certain actions to go forward. So my questions relate to that. How will the CBSA modify its consultation process to ensure that the Trusted Trader program will meet stakeholders' businesses' needs?
Well, as I've said previously, and I think my colleague as well, is we meet with them twice a year. The most recent meeting in November, we had agreement on an adoption strategy. We're still onboarding our federal partners and programs to make sure that the system is complete. Several of them are going through the certification process and putting in their systems so that we can talk to each other. We're going to be monitoring this very closely. And as I said in my comments, I believe that we'll have full adoption or pretty close to full by the spring of 2018.
What's the IT investment cost for a business?
I don't have that information. I wouldn't.
So you have no idea what a business would have to invest to be part of the program?
Do you have anything, Martin?
If I may, again, it's very difficult to get a precise number, answer the previous similar question. It depends on the IT infrastructure of the companies. But the feedback we got is that the potential savings for them was made the investment worthwhile from their perspective. Again, moving away from managing paper, and I've been at the CBSA for 28 years. There's a ton of paper, I can tell you that. So moving away from that and leveraging the IT infrastructure, they see that as a big benefit, and expediting also cargo at the border.
Okay. It would seem to me, if I was a business person, that I would do the evaluation of what the costs were versus whether it was worth doing it. And if you're going to be setting out your performance standards based on how business friendly this is, if I could use that term, you may want to drill down and find out what businesses really, the kind of investments they have to make, small, medium, and large scale users, obviously, of the program going forward. Because one of my notes has been, as Mr. Christopherson said, is to, on a return visit, is to ask you how the percentage of increase going from 1% today, if that's the number that's appropriate today, maybe it's grown since this report was done, but where you've gone from 1% usage to a much larger percentage as a result of the Auditor General's work here. And in that regard as well, I might as well put on the table that I think one of the things I'll be interested in follow-up is to know what your performance standards are, what the list, if it's a laundry list of performance standards, what they are, what you've developed, what the Auditor General has given you is clear indication that those things must be developed. And as you go forward with that, I'll be very interested in hearing back either through Madam Chair, through you to receive the report of the witnesses today, or to have them back for to present the report, to present the results going forward. Because really our work as a committee, in my view, and I believe a lot of the members around the table, is to do thorough and due diligence to our jobs of making sure that when the Auditor General does give you these things, that things are executed on, and they change business behavior or cultural behavior in your organizations that leads to better service for Canadians. So I think that's our job. And so I'll end it with that, Madam Chair, and yield my time to another member.
Thank you. I think that's it. Nobody. Does anybody else want to?
Transport Canada with us.
No, on Wednesday.
Yeah,
on Wednesday.
okay, gotcha.
Okay, if I may, I just would like to thank everyone for your presence today. Je crois qu'on est tous d'accord.
I think we all agree, as we heard, that after the fall reports of the Auditor General, we are mainly concerned with service to Canadians. That's what our key issue in terms of our deliverables as parliamentarians. It's with this in mind that we're going to perhaps ask to see you again to measure the progress that you've made. So I thank you for all the documentations that you could provide us with and allow us to continue our work.
On Wednesday. And we are done.